In the quaint village of St. Mary's Mead, a celebrated florist, Madame Elise Fournier, is found dead in her greenhouse, clutching a poisoned ebony rose, its thorns laced with deadly aconite. Hercule Poirot, with his sharp mind and meticulous moustache, steps into a web of secrets, where envy, ambition, and hidden truths bloom as darkly as the rose itself. Was it the jealous rival, the secretive customer, or the loyal assistant who turned beauty into betrayal? In a race against time, Poirot's little grey cells unravel a mystery where every petal hides a motive, and every thorn a killer. Dive into the Ebony Rose, where elegance meets evil in a classic Agatha Christie tale. Chapter 1. The Greenhouse Enigma. The village of St. Mary's Mead lay drowsy under the October sun, its cottages nestled among hedgerows and its lanes alive with the rustle of fallen leaves. Hercule Poirot, retired yet ever curious, had come to this quiet corner of England at the invitation of an old friend, Miss Jane Marple, whose knack for village intrigues rivaled his own for grander mysteries. He had anticipated tea and conversation, not a summons to a crime scene, but fate, as Poirot often remarked, had a way of arranging itself. The morning air was sharp as he approached the greenhouse of Madame Elise Fournier, a florist whose reputation for exquisite blooms had spread beyond the county. The structure loomed ahead, its glass panes glinting like a jewel against the rolling green. A small crowd, villagers, curious and whispering, hovered at a respectful distance, held back by a young constable whose face was flushed with the importance of his task. Poirot's polished shoes crunched on the gravel path as he adjusted his Homburg hat and smoothed his moustache, a ritual to sharpen the little grey cells. Inspector Japp awaited him at the greenhouse door, his overcoat slightly askew, his expression one of familiar exasperation tempered by relief at Poirot's arrival. "You're a sight for sore eyes, Poirot," he said, mopping his brow despite the chill. "This one's a queer business. Madame Fournier found dead not 2 hours ago, right among her flowers. Looks like her heart gave out. But there's something not right. She was holding a rose. Tight as you please." Poirot's eyes, sharp as a hawk's, took in the scene as he stepped inside. The greenhouse was a cathedral of flora, its air warm and heavy with the scent of earth and petals. Roses, lilies, and exotic orchids lined the shelves, their colours a vibrant contrast to the grim tableau at the centre. Madame Elise Fournier lay sprawled on the stone floor, her silver hair fanned out like a halo. Her face, though pale as wax, held an eerie calm, as if death had caught her in a moment of quiet contemplation. In her right hand, clutched with a rigour that spoke of desperation, was a single rose, its petals black as ebony, its thorns glinting under the filtered sunlight. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, kneeling beside the body with a grace that belied his fastidious nature. He examined the rose without touching it, noting its unusual hue, a rarity even among Fournier's celebrated collection. "This rose, Inspector, it is no ordinary flower. Its beauty, it conceals something, does it not?" Japp shrugged, accustomed to Poirot's cryptic musings. "The doctor's on his way for a proper look, but I'd wager she collapsed while tending her plants. Heart trouble, maybe. She was getting on in years. 50, at least." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "Age, mon ami, doesn't always explain death. The position of the body, the grip on the rose, these are not the signs of a natural passing. Tell me, who found her?" Japp gestured toward a trembling figure by the door, a boy, no older than 20, with dirt-stained hands and eyes wide with shock. "That's Tommy Wells, her assistant. Came in at 8 to water the plants and found her like this. Nearly fainted, poor lad." Poirot rose, his cane tapping lightly on the stone as he approached the boy. "Monsieur Wells," he said, his voice soft yet commanding. "You will recount for Hercule Poirot exactly what you saw, oui? Leave out no detail, however small." Tommy swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. I came in like always, sir. Madame was particular about the morning watering. I saw her there, on the floor, with that rose in her hand. I thought she'd fainted, but when I touched her, she was cold. I ran for help straight away." Poirot's gaze lingered on the boy's hands, noting the fresh soil under his nails. "And this rose, you have seen it before?" Tommy nodded. "It's one of her specials, Ebony Roses, she called them. Grew 'em for the flower show tomorrow. She was proud of those." Poirot turned back to the body, his mind already weaving a tapestry of possibilities. The greenhouse, with its orderly rows and meticulous labels, spoke of Madame Fournier's precision. Yet something, perhaps the rose itself, had disrupted that order. He glanced at Japp. "We must preserve this scene, Inspector. The rose, the body, the surroundings. They tell a story, and Hercule Poirot will uncover it." As the constable ushered the crowd farther back, Poirot's thoughts turned to the village beyond the glass walls. St. Mary's Mead, with its quiet charm, hid secrets as surely as any city. Someone, he knew, had wanted Madame Fournier dead, and the Ebony Rose was the key to their motive. Chapter 2. The three suspects, the parlour of Fournier's Florals, a quaint room tucked behind the shop's vibrant display of blooms, was a study in contrasts. Its walls, papered in a faded rose pattern, bore the weight of time, while vases overflowing with lilies and chrysanthemums lent an air of forced cheer. The morning's tragedy hung over the space like a fog, and the three individuals seated around the polished oak table seemed acutely aware of it. Hercule Poirot, his small frame immaculate in a tailored suit, stood at the head of the room, his cane resting lightly against his side. His moustache, perfectly symmetrical, twitched as he surveyed the trio before him: Harold Baxter, Clara Henshaw, and Tommy Wells. Each, he knew, held a piece of the puzzle that was Madame Elise Fournier's death. Inspector Japp, leaning against the doorframe, cleared his throat. "Right, Poirot. I've rounded them up as you asked. These are the ones closest to the case, far as we can tell. Harold Baxter, regular customer; Clara Henshaw, rival florist; and Tommy Wells, the lad who worked for her. I've got men checking the village for more witnesses, but this lot's our starting point." Poirot inclined his head, his green eyes gleaming with a quiet intensity. "Merci, Inspector. The death of Madame Fournier is no mere accident, I think. The rose, the manner of her passing, these suggest a design most deliberate. We shall begin, mes amis, by understanding those who knew her best." He turned to the suspects, his voice soft, yet carrying an authority that silenced the room. "Each of you will recount your movements yesterday, and I, Hercule Poirot, will listen. The truth, it hides in the smallest details. Harold Baxter, a portly man in his late 40s, with a florid complexion and a gold watch chain straining across his waistcoat, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. His hands, broad and calloused, fidgeted with a handkerchief. "I don't see why I'm here," he began, his voice gruff. "I was just a customer. Bought flowers from Elise, Madame Fournier, regularly. Yesterday was no different." Poirot's gaze was unyielding. though his smile was polite. "Monsieur Baxter, you will indulge me. What time did you visit the shop, and for what purpose?" Baxter dabbed his brow, though the room was cool. "About 2 in the afternoon, I'd say. I came to order a bouquet for my wife, Margaret. Her birthday's tomorrow, and she's partial to roses. Elise was in the shop, arranging some lilies. We talked, I placed my order, and I left. That's all." Poirot's fingers tapped lightly on his cane. "And yet, monsieur, I am told there was an argument. Voices were raised, no? What was the cause?" Baxter's face reddened further, and he glanced at the others, as if seeking an ally. "It was nothing. A misunderstanding about the price. Elise charged a pretty penny for her flowers, and I said so. She didn't take kindly to it, but we sorted it out. I left her alive and well." Poirot noted the man's unease, the way his eyes darted to the door. "You are a man of means, Monsieur Baxter. A successful merchant, eh? Yet you quibble over the cost of flowers. Was there, perhaps, another matter that troubled you?" Baxter's jaw tightened. "I don't know what you're getting at. I paid, I left, and that's the end of it." "Very well," Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild. "We shall return to you, monsieur." He turned to the next suspect, Miss Clara Henshaw, whose angular frame and pinched expression suggested a woman accustomed to disappointment. Her dress, a severe grey, was relieved only by a single brooch shaped like a daisy, a nod to her profession as a florist. Her shop, Henshaw's Blossoms, stood at the far end of Saint. Mary's Mead, its modest displays, overshadowed by Fournier's florals. "Mademoiselle Henshaw," Poirot began, "you and Madame Fournier were competitors, were you not? The village speaks of your rivalry, particularly for the upcoming flower show." Clara's lips thinned, and her eyes, sharp as thorns, met Poirot's without unflinching. "Yes, we were rivals. Elise had a gift for flowers and for stealing my customers. Her roses, especially those ebony ones, were the talk of the county. But I didn't kill her, if that's what you're thinking." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "I think nothing yet, mademoiselle. I observe. Tell me, where were you yesterday afternoon?" Clara folded her hands in her lap, her knuckles white. "I was in my shop all day, preparing my entries for the flower show. I saw Elise in the morning, at her shop. We exchanged words." "Exchanged words?" Poirot's eyebrow arched. "Or perhaps something more heated, or a witness saw you near her greenhouse in the evening." Clara's composure faltered, her fingers tightening. "Who said that? It's nonsense. I was nowhere near her greenhouse. Yes, we argued about the show. She was set to win again, and I told her it wasn't fair, the way she dominated everything. But I left after that. I didn't see her again." Poirot leaned forward slightly, his voice gentle but probing. "You know plants, mademoiselle. Their beauty. Their secrets. Aconite, for example. It is familiar to you?" Clara's eyes narrowed, but she answered steadily. "I know of it. Monkshood. A dangerous plant. But I don't keep it in my shop, and I certainly didn't use it on Elise." Poirot nodded, as if satisfied, though his mind was far from at ease. He turned to the final suspect, Tommy Wells, the young assistant whose boyish face was pale beneath a mop of unruly brown hair. His overalls were stained with soil, and his hands trembled as he clasped them on the table. "Monsieur Wells," Poirot said kindly, "you worked closely with Madame Fournier. You found her this morning, oui. But yesterday, what did you see?" Tommy's voice was barely above a whisper. "I was in the greenhouse most of the day, pruning and watering. Madame was particular about her roses. I saw Mr. Baxter come by in the afternoon, and I heard them arguing, like he said. Later, I saw Miss Henshaw near the shop, but I don't know if she went inside. I finished my work around 6 and went home." Poirot's gaze lingered on the boy's hands, noting the fresh scratches on his fingers. "You handle the roses, Monsieur Wells, the ebony roses in particular. Did you notice anything unusual about them yesterday?" Tommy shook his head, his eyes fixed on the table. "No, sir. They were just like always. Madame loved those roses. She'd spend hours with them, talking to them like they were her children." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "A charming image, monsieur. And yet, one of those roses was her undoing. You saw nothing, no one, tampering with them." Tommy's head shot up, his eyes wide. "No, sir. I'd have said if I did. Madame was good to me. She gave me this job when no one else would, after some trouble I had." Poirot's interest sharpened, though his expression remained serene. "Trouble, monsieur? Of what nature?" Tommy flushed, his voice dropping. "Just youthful mistakes, sir. Nothing serious. Madame believed in second chances." Poirot leaned back, his fingers steepled. "Very well. You are all free to go, for now. But I, Hercule Poirot, will have more questions. The truth, it is like a flower. It blooms only when the conditions are right." As the suspects filed out, Japp approached, his brow furrowed. "What do you make of them, Poirot? Baxter's hiding something, I'd wager, and that Henshaw woman's got a temper. The boy seems shaken, but he's loyal to the victim." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Each has a story, Inspector, and each story has its shadows. Baxter's argument may conceal a deeper grievance. Mademoiselle Henshaw's envy is palpable, but is it motive enough for murder? And young Wells, his loyalty is touching, yet his nervousness suggests he knows more than he says. We must dig, mon ami, into the soil of their lives." Japp sighed. "You and your metaphors, Poirot. What's next, then?" Poirot adjusted his cuffs, his mind already racing. "We return to the greenhouse. The rose, the scene of the crime. It holds secrets yet to be uncovered. And we must speak to others in the village. The gossip of St. Mary's Mead. It is a fertile ground for truth." The two men stepped out into the shop, where the air was thick with the scent of flowers. Poirot paused by a display of roses, their petals soft and inviting. "The ebony rose," he murmured. "It is not just a flower. It is a message, and I, Hercule Poirot, will decipher it." The parlour, now empty, seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for the next revelation. Outside, the village went about its day, unaware of the darkness that had taken root among its blooms. Poirot, however, was undeterred. The little grey cells were at work, and the truth, he knew, would not remain hidden for long. Chapter 3. The Poisoned Petal. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the greenhouse's glass walls, bathing the rows of vibrant flowers in a golden glow. Hercule Poirot stood motionless, his sharp eyes scanning the scene where Madame Elise Fournier had met her end. The air was heavy with the musky sweetness of roses, but an undercurrent of something sinister lingered, a silent testament to the crime. Inspector Japp, hovering nearby, shuffled impatiently, his practical mind eager for action. "Well, Poirot," he said, "the coroner's report should be here soon. What are you looking for now? The body's gone, and we've got the rose bagged as evidence." Poirot's moustache twitched as he turned slowly, his cane tapping the stone floor with deliberate precision. "The body, mon ami, is but one chapter of the story. The scene, It speaks when one listens with care. Observe. He gestured toward the workbench near the spot where Madame Fournier had been found. It was cluttered with pruning shears, a small trowel, and a neatly arranged tray of gardening tools, all dusted with soil. But Poirot's attention fixed on a tiny detail, a faint smear of dark powder on the edge of the bench, barely noticeable against the wood's grain. He leaned closer, his gloved finger hovering over the smear without touching it. "This residue, Inspector. What do you make of it?" Japp squinted, his brow furrowing. "Dirt, I suppose, or some plant food. This place is full of such stuff." Poirot's eyes gleamed with that familiar spark of discovery. "No, no. This is not ordinary soil. It is too fine, too deliberate. I suspect it is connected to the poison that killed Madame Fournier." He straightened, his gaze sweeping the greenhouse. "We must await the coroner's findings, but I wager this is no mere heart failure." As if summoned by his words, the young constable from the morning appeared at the door, a folded paper in hand. "Inspector, sir, the coroner's preliminary report." Japp snatched the paper, scanning it quickly before handing it to Poirot with a grunt. "Aconite, it says. Poison. Just as you thought. Found in her bloodstream and on the thorns of that black rose she was holding. How the devil did that happen?" Poirot's lips curved into a faint, grim smile as he read the report. "Aconite, or monkshood, is a most deadly toxin, Inspector. It kills swiftly, often within hours, with symptoms that mimic a natural collapse, paralysis, heart failure. The thorns of the rose, they were the perfect vehicle. Madame Fournier, she was known to handle her roses without gloves, oui?" Japp nodded, his face darkening. "Aye, Tommy Wells mentioned that. Said she loved feeling the petals, thorns and all. But who'd know that, and use it against her?" Poirot's gaze returned to the workbench. "Someone who knew her habits intimately. Someone with access to this greenhouse and knowledge of poisons. The Ebony Rose. It was not chosen at random. It is rare, striking, a symbol of her triumph. To poison its thorns was to turn her pride into her doom." Japp scratched his head. "So, we're looking for someone clever, with a grudge. That Baxter fellow was sore about prices, and Clara Henshaw's got that rivalry. The boy, Tommy, seems too shaken, but he was here all the time. Could he have done it?" Poirot raised a hand, his expression thoughtful. "Patience, mon ami. The motive? It is not yet clear. But the method? This we can explore. Aconite is not a common poison. It requires knowledge to extract and apply without detection. The residue here," he pointed to the smear, "it suggests preparation in this very place." Japp's eyes widened. "You mean the killer mixed the poison right here? That's bold." "Bold, yes, but calculated," Poirot replied. "The greenhouse is private, secluded. Madame Fournier trusted those who entered. We must learn who had such access." The two men moved toward the rack of ebony roses, their dark petals glistening under the sunlight. Poirot examined one closely, careful not to touch the thorns. "These roses, they are her masterpiece. The flower show tomorrow. She was to present them, non? A victory over her rivals." Japp nodded. "Clara Henshaw was set to lose again, according to the village talk. Those roses of hers don't hold a candle to these." Poirot's fingers hovered near a thorn, his eyes narrowing. "The thorns, they are unusually sharp, even for a rose. And see here." He pointed to a faint, sticky sheen on one thorn, barely visible. "This is not natural. The poison was applied with precision, likely with a fine brush or cloth." Japp whistled softly. "That's no accident. Someone went to a lot of trouble." "Indeed," Poirot said, stepping back. "And trouble, it leaves traces. We must search for more such traces. Tools, containers, perhaps a vial of aconite. The killer, they were careful, but no one is perfect." As they spoke, a soft rustle came from the greenhouse door. Miss Jane Marple appeared, her shawl draped neatly over her shoulders, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Monsieur Poirot, Inspector," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "I hope I'm not intruding. The village is abuzz, and I thought I might offer some insight." Poirot bowed slightly, his respect for the elderly spinster evident. "Mademoiselle Marple, your presence is a gift. The village, it speaks to you in ways it doesn't to others. What have you heard?" Miss Marple's lips pursed thoughtfully. Elise Fournier was a woman of strong character, but not without enemies. Harold Baxter, for one, was seen lingering near the shop more often than his wife's bouquets would warrant. Some say he fancied Elise, though she gave him no encouragement. And Clara Henshaw. Well, her shop is struggling, and she's not one to hide her bitterness. As for young Tommy, he's a good lad. But there's talk of a troubled past. He owes Elise a great deal, yet loyalty can mask other feelings. Poirot's eyes sparkled. "You confirm my thoughts, mademoiselle. The heart of this crime lies in the hearts of those around her. Tell me, have you heard of anyone with knowledge of poisons?" Miss Marple tilted her head. "Clara Henshaw studied botany in her youth, before she turned to floristry. She'd know her way around dangerous plants. And Baxter, being a merchant, has connections, perhaps access to unusual substances. Tommy, though, I doubt has such expertise, but he's clever with his hands." Poirot nodded, filing away the information. "Merci, Mademoiselle Marple. Your observations are most valuable. The poison, it is the key. We must discover its source." Japp, growing restless, gestured towards the door. "I'll have my men search the greenhouse, top to bottom. If there's a vial or brush, we'll find it. What's your next move, Poirot?" Poirot's gaze lingered on the ebony roses. "I will speak again with the suspects, Inspector. Their words, they reveal more than they know. And I will visit the shop, the village, everywhere Madame Fournier's life touched. The little grey cells, they are already at work." As they left the greenhouse, the constable approached with a small evidence bag. "Sir, we found this tucked behind a pot on the workbench. Thought it might be important." Poirot took the bag, holding it up to the light. Inside was a tiny glass vial, no larger than a thimble, with traces of a dark, viscous liquid clinging to its interior. "Mon Dieu," he whispered. "The vessel of death, perhaps." Japp's eyes widened. "Is that—" "Aconite, I suspect," Poirot said, his voice low. "The laboratory will confirm it. But this vial, it was hidden in haste. The killer did not expect us to find it so soon." Miss Marple peered at the vial, her expression grave. "Such a small thing to cause such harm. Be careful, Monsieur Poirot. Whoever did this is clever and desperate." Poirot's smile was resolute. "Desperation, mademoiselle, is the enemy of perfection, and I, Hercule Poirot, will exploit that weakness." The trio stepped into the fading light, the greenhouse looming behind them like a silent witness. The village of St. Mary's Mead seemed peaceful, but Poirot knew better. Somewhere among its quaint lanes and gossiping tongues lay the truth, waiting to be unearthed like a buried root. Chapter 4. The Customer's Tale. The late afternoon light filtered through the lace curtains of Fournier's florals, casting delicate patterns across the shop's polished counter. Hercule Poirot stood near a display of vibrant dahlias, his small, immaculate figure a stark contrast to the riot of colour around him. His cane rested lightly in his hand, and his green eyes, sharp as ever, fixed on Harold Baxter, who sat on a cushioned chair in the corner, looking distinctly uncomfortable. The man's florid face glistened with perspiration, and his fingers toyed incessantly with the gold watch chain draped across his ample waistcoat. Inspector Japp, leaning against the counter, watched with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity, ready to jot down notes. Poirot's voice, when he spoke, was calm, but carried a weight that demanded attention. "Monsieur Baxter, you have told us you visited Madame Fournier yesterday to order a bouquet for your wife's birthday. A simple transaction, oui? Yet the village whispers of an argument, a clash of voices that carried beyond the shop's walls. I ask you now to recount the truth in all its details. What passed between you and Madame Fournier?" Baxter shifted, his chair creaking under his weight. "I've told you, Mr. Poirot. It was nothing serious. A disagreement about the cost of her roses. She charged more than I thought fair, and I said so. Things got a bit heated, but we settled it. I ordered the bouquet and left. That's all there was to it." Poirot's moustache twitched, and he took a deliberate step closer, his gaze unwavering. "Non, monsieur, that is not all. You are a man of business, a merchant of some success, yet you argue over a few shillings for flowers. This does not align with the character of Harold Baxter, who spares no expense for his wife's pleasure. There is something you conceal, I think. What was the true nature of your dispute?" Baxter's eyes darted to Japp, then back to Poirot, as if seeking an escape. "You're making mountains out of molehills," he blustered. "I didn't like being overcharged, that's all. Elise, Madame Fournier, was stubborn, insisted her roses were worth every penny. I paid up in the end, didn't I? Left her perfectly alive at 3 o'clock. Poirot's head tilted slightly, his expression one of polite disbelief. 3 o'clock, you say, and yet a witness places you near the shop closer to 4, lingering by the greenhouse path. Why did you return, Monsieur Baxter?" The man's face reddened further, and he tugged at his collar. "Who's spreading such nonsense? I went home after my visit, straight to my office in the village square. Ask anyone. My clerk, Mr. Davies, saw me there by 3:30. Poirot's fingers tapped lightly on his cane, a rhythmic counterpoint to the tension in the room. "We shall verify this, monsieur. But let us consider another matter. You were a frequent visitor to Fournier's florals, more so than a man simply buying flowers might be. Madame Fournier was a woman of charm, of elegance. Perhaps your visits were not only for bouquets, non?" Baxter's jaw dropped, and he sputtered, "What are you implying?" "I'm a married man, Mr. Poirot. My Margaret loves her flowers, and Elise was the best florist around. That's all there was to it. I'd never do anything improper." Poirot raised a hand, his gesture calming yet firm. "I imply nothing, monsieur. I observe. Your manner, it suggests a discomfort beyond a mere argument over price. Perhaps you admired Madame Fournier's talent, her passion for her craft. Or perhaps there was a secret, a confidence shared between you. If so, it is best to speak now." Baxter's hands clenched into fists, and for a moment it seemed he might protest further. But then his shoulders sagged, and he looked away. His voice, low, All right, I'll tell you. It wasn't just about the flowers. Elise, she knew things about people, things they'd rather keep quiet. She had a way of getting under your skin, making you feel she saw right through you. A week ago, she hinted she knew about a deal I made, a business matter, not entirely above board. Nothing illegal, mind you, but it could have embarrassed me. Yesterday, when I came to order the bouquet, she brought it up again, said something about honesty being the best policy. I lost my temper, told her to mind her own business. That's what the argument was about. Poirot's eyes narrowed, though his expression remained serene. A most interesting revelation, Monsieur Baxter. This deal. It was significant enough to cause you concern? Significant enough, perhaps, to wish Madame Fournier silent. Baxter's head snapped up, his eyes wide with indignation. Now, see here, I didn't kill her. Yes, I was angry, but I'd never resort to murder. I left her shop, went to my office, and that's the end of it. You've got no proof otherwise. Japp, who had been silent, scribbled in his notebook. We'll check with your clerk, Baxter. If your story holds, you're in the clear, for now. But don't leave the village. Poirot nodded, his mind already turning over this new piece of the puzzle. Merci, Monsieur Baxter. You have given us much to consider. You may go, but I, Hercule Poirot, will have more questions if the need arises. As Baxter rose, mopping his brow, Poirot turned to Japp. This business deal, Inspector, it must be investigated. A man like Baxter, he values his reputation. If Madame Fournier threatened to expose him, it is a motive, non? Japp grunted. Could be. But poison? That's a woman's weapon, if you ask me. And those roses. Baxter's no gardener. Clara Henshaw's the one with the know-how. Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. The poison. It is indeed a delicate choice. But do not underestimate the determination of a man cornered, mon ami. We must explore all paths. The shop door chimed as Baxter departed, his heavy footsteps echoing down the path. Poirot moved to the counter, where a ledger lay open, its pages filled with Madame Fournier's precise handwriting. He scanned the entries, noting Baxter's frequent orders, always roses, always extravagant. This man, he spent freely, Poirot mused, yet he argues over price, a contradiction, perhaps, or a performance to hide his true purpose. Japp joined him, peering at the ledger. Looks like he was here almost weekly. That's a lot of flowers, even for a doting husband. Indeed, Poirot said, closing the ledger with a soft thud. And Madame Fournier. She was not only a florist, but a keeper of secrets. We must learn what else she knew, about Baxter, about others. The village, it holds the answers. Outside, the sun dipped lower, casting the shop in a warm amber glow. Poirot's thoughts turned to the greenhouse, to the ebony rose that had delivered death so elegantly. Baxter's story, while revealing, was but one petal in a larger bloom. The truth, he knew, lay in the interplay of motives, envy, fear, perhaps even love. As he and Japp stepped into the cooling air, Poirot's little grey cells were already weaving the threads of the case, determined to uncover the hand that had turned beauty into betrayal. Chapter 5. The Rival's Grudge. The evening had settled over St. Mary's Mead with a quiet that belied the turmoil brewing in its heart. The lamps in Fournier's florals cast a soft glow across the shop, their light dancing on the glass vases that lined the shelves. Hercule Poirot sat at a small table in the back room, his posture impeccable, his green eyes fixed on Miss Clara Henshaw. She sat opposite him, her thin frame rigid, her grey dress as unyielding as her expression. Her hands, calloused from years of tending flowers, were clasped tightly in her lap, and the daisy-shaped brooch at her collar glinted faintly. Inspector Japp stood by the window, his notebook at the ready, though his impatience was evident in the occasional tap of his foot. Poirot's voice, when he spoke, was gentle yet incisive, like a gardener pruning a wayward branch. "Mademoiselle Henshaw, you have admitted to a rivalry with Madame Fournier, a competition that has cost you customers and prestige. This rivalry, it was not merely professional, I think. There is a bitterness in your words, a wound that runs deep. Tell me, what passed between you and Madame Fournier yesterday?" Clara's lips pursed, her eyes narrowing, as if weighing how much to reveal. "I told you, Mr. Poirot. We argued. It was about the flower show. Elise was set to win again with those wretched ebony roses of hers. She had a knack for stealing the spotlight, and I was tired of it. I went to her shop in the morning to confront her, to ask her to withdraw one of her entries, give the rest of us a chance. She laughed at me, said I should improve my own blooms if I wanted to compete." Poirot's fingers rested lightly on his cane, his gaze unwavering. "And this laughter, mademoiselle, it stung, oui? Enough to provoke more than words." Clara's hands tightened, her knuckles whitening. "I'm not a murderer, if that's what you mean. Yes, I was angry. I've worked hard for years, building my shop from nothing, only to watch Elise sweep in with her fancy roses and take it all away. But I didn't kill her. I left after our argument, went back to my shop, and stayed there." Poirot tilted his head, his moustache twitching slightly. "Yet you were seen near the greenhouse later that evening, mademoiselle. A witness places you on the path, close to where Madame Fournier tended her roses. Why were you there, if not to confront her again?" Clara's eyes flashed, a spark of defiance breaking through her reserve. "Who's telling such lies? Wasn't near her greenhouse. I was in my shop all day, preparing my own entries for the show. I had no reason to skulk around her property." Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft but probing. "No reason, mademoiselle. Envy is a powerful motive. Madame Fournier's success, it threatened your livelihood. And you, with your knowledge of plants, would know the properties of aconite, the monkshood that killed her. It is not a common poison, but one a florist might understand." Clara's face paled, though her jaw remained set. "I studied botany years ago, yes, but I don't keep poisons in my shop. Aconite is dangerous. Any fool knows that. If I wanted to ruin Elise, I'd have beaten her at the flower show, not resorted to murder." Poirot's smile was enigmatic, his eyes never leaving hers. "A commendable ambition, mademoiselle. But ambition, when thwarted, can turn to desperation. Tell me, did you ever visit Madame Fournier's greenhouse? Perhaps to admire her roses, or to learn her secrets?" Clara shook her head vehemently. "Never. I wouldn't set foot in that place. It was her domain, and she guarded it fiercely. She didn't share her methods, not even with that boy, Tommy." Poirot's fingers tapped rhythmically on his cane. "And yet, someone entered that greenhouse, mademoiselle. Someone applied aconite to the thorns of an ebony rose, knowing Madame Fournier's habit of handling her flowers bare-handed. This was no impulse. It was a plan, meticulous and cruel. You, with your skill, could devise such a plan, non?" Clara's voice rose, sharp with indignation. "You're twisting my words. I hated losing to Elise. I won't deny it. But I'm no killer. If you want to look at someone with access to that greenhouse, talk to Tommy Wells. He was in and out all day, fussing over those roses. Or Baxter. He was always hanging about, making a nuisance of himself. Poirot's gaze softened, though his mind was as sharp as ever. Merci, Mademoiselle Henshaw. Your candour is noted. But the heart, it reveals what the tongue conceals. You may go, for now. As Clara rose, her movements stiff with suppressed anger, Japp stepped forward, his notebook snapping shut. She's got a temper, Poirot, and that botany knowledge makes her a likely candidate for handling aconite. What do you think? Poirot adjusted his cuffs, his expression thoughtful. She is proud, Inspector, and pride wounded is a dangerous thing. Her alibi is weak, alone in her shop, with no one to confirm it. Yet her denial is forceful, almost too forceful. We must verify her movements, and we must learn more of this aconite. Its source, it will point us to the killer. Japp nodded, though his skepticism was evident. I'll have my men check her shop, see if there's any trace of monkshood. But I'm still leaning toward Baxter. His story about that business deal sounds fishy. Poirot's eyes gleamed. All paths must be explored, mon ami. Mademoiselle Henshaw's envy is clear, but is it enough to drive her to murder? Or is she, perhaps, a convenient distraction? We must return to the greenhouse, to the vial we found. Its secrets are not yet fully revealed. The two men stepped out into the shop, where the scent of flowers was now tinged with the faint bitterness of suspicion. Poirot paused by a display of Clara's own flowers, brought in for comparison by the flower show committee. They were lovely, pale pinks and creams, but lacked the bold brilliance of Madame Fournier's ebony roses. A contrast, Inspector, Poirot murmured. Beauty without audacity. Mademoiselle Henshaw, she sees this difference, and it festers. As they moved towards the door, a soft voice interrupted. Miss Jane Marple stood in the doorway, her knitting bag tucked under her arm, her eyes bright with that quiet wisdom Poirot so admired. Monsieur Poirot, a word, if I may. Poirot bowed slightly. Always, Mademoiselle Marple. Your insights, they are like the light that reveals the hidden. She smiled faintly, stepping into the shop. Clara Henshaw is a proud woman, but not a reckless one. I knew her mother, you see, a stern woman, always pushing Clara to excel. Clara's spent her life trying to prove herself, but Elise Fournier's success was a blow she couldn't bear. Still, poison? It's so calculated. I wonder if you've considered the village apothecary, Mr. Grayson. He's a quiet man, but he knows his herbs, and he's been seen delivering packages to Elise's shop. Poirot's interest sharpened. A most valuable observation, mademoiselle. This apothecary, he could provide aconite, perhaps unwittingly. We shall visit him. Japp, scribbling in his notebook, looked up. Grayson's a bit of a recluse, but I'll send a man to question him. Anything else, Miss Marple? She shook her head, her needles clicking softly. Only this, Inspector. Clara's pride makes her sharp-tongued, but her hands are steady. If she did this, she'd have covered her tracks better. Be careful, Monsieur Poirot. The truth is, like a delicate plant, it needs gentle handling. Poirot's smile was warm. Merci, mademoiselle. The little grey cells, they are grateful for your wisdom. As Miss Marple departed, Poirot turned to Japp. We have much to do, Inspector. The apothecary, the greenhouse, the suspect's alibis. All must be examined. The Ebony Rose, it is not just a weapon, but a symbol. Its meaning I will uncover. The shop door closed behind them, and the village lay quiet under the deepening dusk. But for Hercule Poirot, the night was alive with possibilities, each one a step closer to the truth buried in the heart of St. Mary's Mead. Chapter 6. The Employee's Secret. The twilight air of St. Mary's Mead carried a chill as Hercule Poirot and Inspector Japp made their way back to Fournier's Florals, the shop now dim, its windows reflecting the last embers of the setting sun. The village had settled into a hush, broken only by the occasional clatter of a passing cart or the distant bark of a dog. Inside the shop's back room, Poirot had arranged to meet Tommy Wells, the young assistant whose trembling hands and averted eyes had piqued his curiosity. The boy was already there, perched on the edge of a chair, his soil-stained overalls a stark contrast to the room's faded elegance. His face, pale and boyish, bore the weight of grief and something else. Fear, perhaps, or a secret he dared not voice. Poirot settled into a chair opposite Tommy, his movements deliberate, his green eyes gentle yet piercing. Inspector Japp stood by the door, his notebook open, though his expression suggested he expected little from the nervous lad. Poirot, however, knew that the smallest souls often held the largest truths. "Monsieur Wells," he began, his voice soft as a whisper in a confessional, "you have suffered a great shock finding Madame Fournier as you did. But now you must help Hercule Poirot uncover the truth. You were close to her, oui? Her trusted assistant. Tell me of your day yesterday, every moment you can recall." Tommy's fingers twisted together, the scratches on them raw and red. I told you, sir. I was in the greenhouse most of the day, pruning the roses and watering the plants. Madame was particular about her schedule. She liked everything just so. I saw Mr. Baxter come by in the afternoon, and I heard them arguing in the shop. Later, I saw Miss Henshaw on the path near the greenhouse, but I didn't see her go in. I finished my work around 6 and went home to my lodgings. Poirot's moustache twitched, and he leaned forward slightly, his cane resting across his knees. "You repeat your story, monsieur, and it is consistent, which is good. But there is a tremor in your voice, a hesitation in your eyes. You are loyal to Madame Fournier, non? She gave you work when others would not. Yet loyalty, it can bind the tongue when it should speak. What do you hide, Tommy Wells?" The boy's eyes widened, and he shook his head, his voice hung cracking. "I'm not hiding anything, sir. I swear it. Madame was kind to me. I'd never hurt her. She was like a mother, almost. I'd have done anything for her." Poirot's gaze softened, though his mind remained razor-sharp. "And yet you speak of trouble in your past, a trouble Madame Fournier overlooked. Tell me of this trouble, monsieur. It may illuminate the shadows of this case." Tommy's shoulders hunched, and he stared at the floor, his voice barely audible. "It was a few years back, sir. I got mixed up with some lads in the next village. Petty theft, nothing big. Stole some tools from a shed, sold them for a bit of cash. I was young, stupid. Got caught, and the village turned against me. Madame Fournier. She heard about it, but gave me a chance anyway. Said she believed in me. I owed her everything." Poirot nodded, his fingers tapping lightly on his cane. "A generous act indeed. And this debt, it made you protective of her, oui? You saw things, perhaps, that others did not. You mentioned Mademoiselle Henshaw near the greenhouse. What was her manner? Was she furtive, as one who does not wish to be seen?" Tommy hesitated, his eyes flickering to Japp and back to Poirot. "She was quick, sir, like she didn't want to linger. I saw her from the greenhouse door, just for a moment, around dusk. She was on the path, looking toward the shop, but I didn't see her go closer. I thought maybe she was just curious, or angry about the flower show. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Curious, or perhaps something more. You are observant, Monsieur Wells, yet you hold back. The ebony roses, they were Madame Fournier's pride. Did you notice anything unusual about them yesterday? A tool out of place? A stranger's presence? Tommy shook his head, but his hands trembled more noticeably. No, sir. The roses were fine. I pruned them myself in the morning. Madame checked them after me, like always. She was so careful with them, always touching them, feeling the petals. The thorns never bothered her. Poirot's gaze lingered on the boy's hands, noting the scratches again. Those marks, monsieur, they are from the roses, eh? The ebony roses, with their sharp thorns. Tommy glanced at his hands, startled, as if seeing the scratches for the first time. Yes, sir. I'm always getting nicked. The ebony roses, they've got thorns sharper than most. But I'm careful, and I always wear gloves when Madame tells me to. Poirot's smile was faint, almost imperceptible. Careful, yes, but accidents happen, no? And the vial we found, the one with traces of aconite, did you ever see such a thing in the greenhouse? Tommy's face paled further, and he shook his head vehemently. No, sir. I don't know anything about poisons. I just tended the plants, did what Madame asked. I couldn't. Poirot raised a hand, his gesture calming. Peace, monsieur. I do not accuse you. But you were in the greenhouse, with access to the roses. You saw Mademoiselle Henshaw, and perhaps others. If there is more you know, even a small thing, it could save another life. Tommy's eyes filled with tears, and he swallowed hard. There's nothing else, sir. I swear it. I just want to know who did this to her. She didn't deserve it. Jap, who had been silent, stepped forward, his voice gruff. All right, lad, that's enough for now. But don't go far. We'll need to speak to you again. As Tommy rose, his movements jerky, Poirot watched him closely. One final question, Monsieur Wells. Did Madame Fournier ever speak of enemies, of threats, someone who wished her harm? Tommy hesitated, then shook his head. She never said anything like that. She was private, kept to herself. But she knew things, about people in the village. Sometimes she'd hint at it, like she was holding cards she didn't play. I never asked what she meant. Poirot nodded, filing away this fragment of insight. Merci, monsieur. You have been most helpful. As Tommy shuffled out, Jap turned to Poirot, his brow furrowed. The boy's scared out of his wits, but I don't see him as a killer. Too soft, too loyal. What do you make of him? Poirot adjusted his hat, his expression thoughtful. He is young, Inspector, and frightened. But fear can mask many things. Guilt, or perhaps knowledge he does not yet understand. His scratches, they are curious. If he handled the poisoned rose, he would be dead, unless he wore gloves, as he claims. We must confirm his tasks in the greenhouse. And this talk of Madame Fournier's secrets, it echoes what Baxter said. She was a woman who saw too much. Jap scribbled in his notebook. I'll have my men check his lodgings, see if there's anything suspicious. But I'm still betting on Clara Henshaw. She's got the knowledge and the motive. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Motive, yes, but opportunity. We must trace the aconite's path. The apothecary, Mr. Grayson, may hold the key, and we must return to the greenhouse to examine the tools and the roses once more. The truth, It is like a seedling. It grows slowly, but it will break through. As they stepped into the shop, the scent of flowers enveloped them, a reminder of the beauty that had concealed a deadly act. Poirot paused by a vase of ebony roses, their dark petals absorbing the lamplight. "These roses," he murmured, "they are not just a weapon, but a signature. The killer chose them with care. And I, Hercule Poirot, will uncover why." The village beyond the shop was now cloaked in darkness, its secrets hidden in the quiet lanes. But Poirot's mind was alight, piecing together the fragments of a puzzle that grew more intricate with each revelation. Chapter 7. The Flower Show. The morning of the St. Mary's Mead. Flower Show dawned bright and crisp, with a breeze that carried the scent of autumn leaves and blooming flowers through the village. The town hall, a modest building with ivy-clad walls, had been transformed into a vibrant showcase of horticultural artistry. Tables groaned under the weight of roses, dahlias, and chrysanthemums, their colours a riot against the hall's staid interior. The air buzzed with the chatter of villagers, their excitement tempered by the shadow of Madame Elise Fournier's death. Her absence was a palpable void, yet her ebony roses, displayed posthumously by the show committee, stood as a silent testament to her genius, their dark petals drawing gasps and whispers. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in his tailored suit and Homburg hat, moved through the crowd with the grace of a man accustomed to observation. His cane tapped lightly on the polished floor, and his green eyes, sharp as ever, missed nothing. Inspector Japp trailed behind, his practical demeanour at odds with the festive atmosphere. "Can't say I see the point of all this fuss over flowers," Japp muttered, dodging a woman carrying a towering arrangement of lilies. "But if it helps us catch our killer, I'm all for it, Poirot." Poirot's moustache twitched with a faint smile. "The flower show, mon ami, is not merely about blooms. It is a stage where ambition, pride, and envy play their parts. Madame Fournier's roses, they are the star of this drama, and their presence stirs the hearts of those who coveted her success. Observe, and we shall learn." The ebony roses, arranged in a crystal vase on a central table, were indeed the focal point. Their petals, black as a moonless night, seemed to absorb the light, and their thorns, sharp and menacing, gleamed under the hall's chandeliers. A placard beside them read, "In memory of Elise Fournier," and already they had been awarded first prize, a decision announced with sombre ceremony. Poirot noted the reactions of those nearby, admiration from some, resentment from others. Among the latter was Clara Henshaw, whose own display of pale pink roses, though lovely, paled in comparison. She stood by her table, her thin lips pressed into a line, her eyes fixed on Fournier's roses with a mixture of defeat and defiance. Poirot approached her, his manner courteous but probing. "Mademoiselle Henshaw, your roses are charming, yet they stand in the shadow of Madame Fournier's. This must be a bitter moment, non?" Clara's gaze snapped to him, her hands clenching the edge of her table. "Bitter? Of course it's bitter. Elise wins even in death. Those roses, they're a mockery. I worked just as hard, but no one cares about my blooms." Her voice was low, but the venom in it was unmistakable. Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. "And yet you entered the show, knowing you would face her roses. A brave choice, or perhaps a desperate one. Did you hope, perhaps, to triumph over her memory?" Clara's cheeks flushed, and she straightened, her voice sharp. I entered because I had to. My shop's dying, Mr. Poirot. I needed to show the village I'm as good as she was. But murder? I've told you. I didn't do it. I'd rather beat her fair and square." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Fair and square, mademoiselle. A noble sentiment. Yet the poison on those thorns, it was not fair. We shall speak again." He moved away, leaving Clara to her simmering frustration, her hands fussing with her roses as if to erase her outburst. Japp, who had overheard, leaned in. "She's got motive in spades, Poirot. Losing to Fournier again would have been the last straw. And she knows her plants, aconites right up her alley." Poirot's fingers tapped his cane. "Motive, yes, but we must not rush to judgment, Inspector. Envy is a fire that burns brightly, but it doesn't always lead to murder. Let us see what others reveal." The crowd parted to reveal Harold Baxter, standing near a display of orchids, his florid face flushed from the warmth of the room. He was speaking to a group of villagers, his voice loud with forced joviality, but his eyes darted nervously toward Fournier's roses. Poirot approached, his presence commanding attention. "Monsieur Baxter, you attend the flower show, yet your thoughts seem elsewhere. The ebony roses, they draw your eye, non?" Baxter started, his handkerchief appearing to mop his brow. "Oh, Mr. Poirot, just admiring the display. Elise's roses. Well, they're something, aren't they? A shame she's not here to see them win." Poirot's smile was polite but piercing. "A shame, indeed. And yet you were seen delivering a package to her shop a few days ago, before her death. What was in this package, monsieur?" Baxter's hand froze mid-mop, and he coughed, his eyes flickering to the crowd. "A package? Oh, that. Just some supplies. Twine, labels, that sort of thing. I do business with lots of shops, you know. Nothing unusual." Poirot's gaze held steady. "And yet, monsieur, such a delivery is curious, given your argument with Madame Fournier. Was this package, perhaps, a gesture of reconciliation, or something else?" Baxter's voice rose, a touch defensive. "I told you, it was nothing. Just business. I didn't even see her when I dropped it off, left it with Tommy at the shop door. Ask him if you don't believe me." Poirot inclined his head. "We shall, monsieur. The truth, it has a way of blooming, like these flowers." He turned away, leaving Baxter to his uneasy conversation, and Japp scribbled a note. "Tommy didn't mention any package," Japp said quietly. "Think Baxter's lying?" "Perhaps," Poirot replied, his eyes scanning the room. "Or perhaps young Wells omits what he fears to reveal. We must ask him." Their attention shifted to Tommy Wells, who stood near the back of the hall, arranging a small tribute of white lilies in memory of his employer. His hands, still marked with scratches, moved with care, but his eyes were red-rimmed, his expression one of quiet sorrow. Poirot approached, his voice gentle. "Monsieur Wells, you honor Madame Fournier with your work. But I must ask, did Monsieur Baxter deliver a package to the shop in recent days?" Tommy's hands paused, and he looked up, startled. "A package? Oh, yes, sir, I think so. A few days ago he left a small parcel at the door. Said it was for Madame. I gave it to her, but I didn't see what was inside. She just nodded and put it on the counter." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And this parcel, it was unremarkable. No strange smell, no unusual weight." Tommy shook his head. "Nothing I noticed, sir. It was just a brown paper package, tied with string. Madame didn't seem bothered by it." Japp frowned. "Why didn't you mention this before, lad?" Tommy flushed, his voice low. "I forgot, sir. with everything that happened. It didn't seem important. Poirot's smile was reassuring, though his mind was racing. No detail is unimportant, monsieur. Merci for your honesty. As Tommy returned to his lilies, Poirot turned to Japp. This package, it may be nothing, or it may be everything. We must learn its contents. The show continued, with villagers admiring the displays and judges murmuring over their clipboards. Poirot's gaze lingered on the ebony roses, their beauty now tinged with menace. He moved to the greenhouse after the show, where the police had cordoned off the crime scene. The workbench caught his eye again, and he knelt to examine it closely. Beneath a stack of pruning shears, he found a small scrap of brown paper, its edge torn, bearing a faint trace of the same dark powder he had noted before. Mon Dieu, he murmured, holding it up to the light. A fragment, perhaps, of Baxter's package, or something else entirely. Inspector, this must be tested. If it carries aconite, we are closer to our killer. Japp took the scrap, his expression grim. I'll get it to the lab. But Poirot, this could point to any of them. Baxter with his package, Clara with her plant knowledge, or even Tommy, who's always in here. Poirot nodded, his eyes on the roses. The flower show, it has shown us more than blooms. It has shown us pride, fear, and secrets. The Ebony Rose, it is the heart of this crime. And I, Hercule Poirot, will uncover its truth. As they left the greenhouse, the village settled into evening, its lights twinkling like stars. The puzzle was growing clearer, but the final piece remained elusive, hidden in the interplay of human desires. Chapter 8. The Hidden Motive. The parlour of Fournier's Florals, bathed in the soft glow of a single lamp, seemed to hold its breath as Hercule Poirot gathered the three suspects, Harold Baxter, Clara Henshaw, and Tommy Wells, for a final confrontation. The room, with its faded rose-patterned wallpaper and vases of wilting blooms, felt smaller now, the air thick with tension. Outside, St. Mary's Mead lay cloaked in the stillness of early evening, the village's quiet charm at odds with the drama unfolding within. Poirot stood at the centre, his small frame commanding, his cane tapping a slow, deliberate rhythm on the floor. Inspector Japp, stationed by the door, watched with a mix of anticipation and scepticism, his notebook at the ready. Poirot's green eyes swept over the trio, each seated stiffly, their faces a study in unease. Baxter mopped his brow with a handkerchief, his florid complexion betraying nervous agitation. Clara sat with her hands clasped tightly, her thin lips set in a defiant line, though her eyes flickered with apprehension. Tommy, pale and fidgety, stared at his scratched hands as if they held answers he could not voice. The Ebony Rose, preserved in a glass case on the table, gleamed darkly, its thorns a silent accusation. Mes amis, Poirot began, his voice calm but resonant. We are gathered to unravel the mystery of Madame Elise Fournier's death. She was found in her greenhouse, clutching a poisoned rose, her life extinguished by aconite applied to its thorns. This was no accident, but a murder most calculated. The question is not only who, but why. The motive, it hides in the shadows of your lives, and I, Hercule Poirot, will bring it to light. He turned first to Baxter, his gaze piercing. Monsieur Baxter, you are a man of ambition, a merchant whose success depends on reputation. You admitted to an argument with Madame Fournier, not over the price of flowers, but over a business deal she threatened to expose. A deal, perhaps, that could tarnish your standing. You delivered a package to her shop, days before her death. A package you claim contained only twine and labels. Yet a fragment of brown paper, bearing traces of aconite, was found in the greenhouse. Was this package, monsieur? More than it seemed. Baxter's face reddened, and he surged to his feet, his voice booming. "This is outrageous! I told you, it was just supplies. I had no reason to kill Elise. Yes, she hinted at my deal. A shipment of goods I undervalued to avoid taxes. It was a mistake, not a crime. I begged her to keep quiet, and she agreed after our argument. Why would I kill her?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Why, indeed? Because a woman who knows secrets is a danger, non? Your visits to her shop, they were frequent, more than a man buying flowers for his wife requires. Perhaps you sought her silence, or her favor, in ways you dare not admit." Baxter's eyes widened, and he sputtered, "That's slander. I admired her, yes, but nothing improper. I'm a married man." Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. "Sit, monsieur. Your passion. It is noted, but it does not clear you. We shall see what the laboratory says of that paper fragment." He turned to Clara, whose rigid posture had not softened. "Mademoiselle Henshaw, your rivalry with Madame Fournier was no secret. Her ebony roses outshone your blooms, stealing your customers and your pride. The flower show, it was to be her triumph and your defeat. You know plants, their virtues and their dangers. Aconite, it is within your knowledge, oui? And you were seen near the greenhouse the evening before her death, despite your denials." Clara's eyes flashed, her voice sharp as a thorn. "I've told you, I wasn't there. Yes, I envied Elise. She took everything. My trade, my reputation. But I wanted to beat her at the show, not kill her. I know about aconite, but I'd never use it. You've got no proof, only gossip." Poirot's gaze held hers, unyielding. "Proof, mademoiselle, is in the details. The vial of aconite found in the greenhouse, the residue on the workbench. These suggest a hand skilled in plants. Your alibi, it is weak, with no one to confirm your presence in your shop. Envy, when it festers, can lead to desperate acts." Clara's hands clenched, but she said nothing. Her silence a wall Poirot could not yet breach. He turned to Tommy, whose trembling had grown more pronounced. "Monsieur Wells, you are the loyal assistant, the boy Madame Fournier trusted. Yet your hands bear scratches from the roses, and your fear betrays you. You saw Mademoiselle Henshaw near the greenhouse, but is there more you have not told? Did you see another, perhaps, or notice something amiss with the roses?" Tommy's voice was barely a whisper, his eyes fixed on the floor. "I told you everything, sir. I saw Miss Henshaw, but only for a moment. The roses were fine when I left. I'd never hurt Madame. She was good to me." Poirot's voice softened, but his words were precise. "And yet you speak of her knowledge, her secrets. She knew things about the village, things that could wound. Did she ever speak of Monsieur Baxter's deal, or Mademoiselle Henshaw's struggles? Or perhaps of your own past, the trouble that made her your savior?" Tommy's head snapped up, his eyes wide with panic. "She never said anything like that. Just hints sometimes about people not being what they seem. I didn't ask questions. I just did my work." Poirot paced slowly, his cane tapping a rhythm that seemed to echo the pulse of the room. The Ebony Rose, it was chosen with care. Its thorns, laced with aconite, were a weapon tailored to Madame Fournier's habits. She handled her roses bare-handed, a fact known to those close to her. The killer, they were intimate with her life, her greenhouse, her pride. He stopped, facing the trio, his voice rising slightly. "Let us consider the facts. Monsieur Baxter, your secret deal gave Madame Fournier power over you, a motive to silence her. Mademoiselle Henshaw, your envy burned brightly, and your knowledge of plants made you capable of this crime. Monsieur Wells, your loyalty is touching, but your scratches and your fear suggest you know more than you say. One of you applied the poison, here in this very place, and left the vial to be found." Japp stepped forward, his voice gruff. "Come on, Poirot, you're circling. Who's your bet?" Poirot's eyes gleamed, and he raised a finger. "Patience, Inspector. The motive, it is hidden, but the method points the way. The aconite was applied with precision, likely with a brush, in the greenhouse where Madame worked alone. Or so she thought. The vial, the paper fragment, the residue, these are the threads of a tapestry. And I, Hercule Poirot, see its pattern." He turned to Clara, his voice steady. "Mademoiselle Henshaw, your pride was your undoing. You visited the greenhouse that evening, not to steal, but to sabotage. You knew Madame Fournier's habit, her love for her roses. You applied aconite to the thorns of an ebony rose, intending to ruin her display, or so you claim. But the poison was lethal, and you knew it. You staged her death to look natural, but the little grey cells, they do not." Clara's face drained of colour, and she rose, her voice a hiss. "You can't prove that. I wasn't there." Poirot's smile was resolute. "The vial, mademoiselle, bore a trace of your shop's label, a detail you couldn't erase, and the apothecary, Mr. Grayson, has confirmed selling you a small quantity of aconite, claiming it was for pest control. The truth, it blooms at last." Clara's defiance crumbled, and she sank back into her chair, her hands covering her face. "I didn't mean to kill her," she whispered. "I just wanted her roses to fail, to make her lose the show. I didn't know. The poison was stronger than I thought." Japp stepped forward, his cuffs ready. "That's enough, Miss Henshaw. You're coming with us." Poirot watched as Clara was led away, his expression sombre. "The heart, mon ami, it is a garden of both beauty and poison. Mademoiselle Henshaw chose the latter." The room fell silent. The Ebony Rose a mute witness to the truth unveiled. The case was nearing its close, but Poirot's mind lingered on the tragedy of ambition unchecked. Chapter 9. The Confession. The air in the parlour of Fournier's Florals was heavy with the weight of revelation, the lamplight casting long shadows that danced across the rose-patterned walls. Clara Henshaw sat crumpled in her chair, her hands covering her face, her shoulders trembling, as the truth she had fought to conceal spilled forth. Hercule Poirot stood before her, his small frame radiating quiet authority, his green eyes softened by a trace of pity, but unyielding in their pursuit of justice. Inspector Japp, cuffs in hand, stood ready to act, his face a mask of grim satisfaction. Harold Baxter and Tommy Wells remained seated, their expressions a mix of shock and relief, as if the storm that had threatened them all had finally broken over another. Poirot's voice, when he spoke, was measured, each word chosen with care. "Mademoiselle Henshaw, you have admitted to a grave act. You say you meant only to ruin Madame Fournier's roses, to tarnish her triumph at the flower show. Yet you chose aconite, a poison most deadly, and applied it to the thorns of her beloved Ebony Rose, knowing she would handle it with bare hands. This, you claim, was not meant to kill. I, Hercule Poirot, find this difficult to believe. Speak now, and tell us the full truth. The heart, it cannot hide forever." Clara's hands fell to her lap, revealing a face streaked with tears, her eyes hollow with despair. "I didn't want her dead," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I swear it. I hated Elise. Her success, her roses, the way she made my work seem small. My shop was failing, my customers gone to her. The flower show was my last chance to prove myself. But those ebony roses, they were unbeatable. I couldn't stand it." She paused, her breath hitching, and Poirot leaned forward slightly, his cane resting lightly in his hands. "Continue, mademoiselle. How did you come to use the aconite?" Clara's gaze dropped to the floor, her voice barely audible. "I remembered it from my botany studies years ago. Monkshood, aconite, it's deadly. But I thought a small amount, just on the thorns, would sicken the roses, make them wilt before the show. I got it from Mr. Grayson, the apothecary. I told him it was for pests, and he didn't ask questions. I went to the greenhouse that evening, after dusk, when I knew Elise would be in the shop. Tommy was gone, and the place was quiet. I used a brush to paint the thorns, just one rose, the one she'd likely pick for her display. I was careful. Gloves, a cloth to wipe the brush. I didn't want anyone hurt." Poirot's eyes narrowed, his voice gentle but incisive. "And yet, mademoiselle, you knew Madame Fournier's habit of handling her roses without gloves. You knew the poison's strength. This was no mere prank. It was a risk that could kill. Did you not consider this?" Clara's head snapped up, her eyes flashing with a mix of guilt and defiance. "I thought it would only make her ill, maybe keep her from the show. I didn't know how strong it was. I panicked when I heard she was dead. I never meant for this to happen." Japp stepped forward, his voice gruff. "Intention or not, Miss Henshaw, you've confessed to poisoning that rose. That's murder, plain and simple. You're coming with us to the station." Poirot raised a hand, his gesture commanding pause. "One moment, Inspector. Mademoiselle Henshaw, you say you acted alone? Oui? No one aided you. No one knew of your plan. The vial we found, the paper fragment with aconite traces, these were yours alone." Clara nodded, her voice trembling. "Yes, all mine. I hid the vial behind a pot, thought no one would find it. The paper was from the package I used to carry the brush and gloves. I didn't think it would come to this." Poirot's gaze shifted to Baxter and Tommy, who had remained silent, their faces pale. "Monsieur Baxter, Monsieur Wells, you have heard Mademoiselle Henshaw's confession. Is there anything you wish to add? A detail, perhaps, that clarifies this tragedy?" Baxter, his handkerchief crumpled in his fist, shook his head. "I've nothing to do with this, Mr. Poirot. I argued with Elise, yes, but I never touched those roses. I'm just glad the truth's out." Tommy, his eyes red, spoke softly. "I didn't know, sir. I saw Miss Henshaw that evening, like I said, but I never thought she'd do something like this. Madame, she deserved better." Poirot nodded, his expression sombre. "Indeed, she did. Mademoiselle Henshaw, your envy has cost a life and your own future. The law will decide your fate. But the truth, it is now clear." Japp moved forward, gently but firmly, taking Clara's arm. "Come along, Miss Henshaw. We'll need a full statement." As he led her towards the door, she cast a final glance at the Ebony Rose in its glass case, her eyes filled with a mix of regret and resignation. Poirot watched her go, his mind still turning over the details. To Japp, he said quietly, "The case is solved, mon ami, yet it leaves a taste of sorrow, envy, It is a poison as deadly as aconite. Japp nodded, his notebook snapping shut. Aye, and it's a lesson for the village. I'll make sure the lab confirms the aconite on that paper fragment. But it sounds like we've got our woman. Good work, Poirot. Poirot inclined his head, but his eyes lingered on the rose. The work, it is never truly done until the heart understands. Let us ensure all is in order, Inspector. The apothecary, Mr. Grayson, must confirm the sale of aconite, and the greenhouse must be searched once more for any overlooked clues. As Japp agreed and stepped out to organize his men, Poirot remained in the parlor, his gaze fixed on the Ebony Rose. Its beauty was undimmed, but its thorns now spoke of betrayal rather than triumph. The village of St. Mary's Mead would remember this tragedy, and Poirot, with his little grey cells, had ensured that justice, however bittersweet, had prevailed. Chapter 10. The Final Bloom. The greenhouse of Fournier's Florals stood silent under the pale light of a crescent moon, its glass panes reflecting the quiet beauty of St. Mary's Mead at night. Inside, the air was still thick with the scent of roses, their petals soft against the darkness, but the atmosphere carried a weight of finality. Hercule Poirot stood alone by the workbench where Madame Elise Fournier had met her end, his small, immaculate figure a study in contemplation. His cane rested against the bench, and his green eyes, ever sharp, lingered on the row of ebony roses, their dark allure undiminished by the tragedy they had wrought. The case was closed, Clara Henshaw's confession secured, yet Poirot's mind, with its relentless precision, sought to ensure no detail had been overlooked. Inspector Japp joined him, his overcoat slightly rumpled from a long day, his face etched with the satisfaction of a case resolved. "Well, Poirot," he said, his voice echoing faintly in the humid space, "we've got our murderer. Clara Henshaw's statement is signed, and the lab confirmed aconite on that paper fragment and the vial. The apothecary, Grayson, verified he sold her a small quantity of monkshood extract, though he swears he thought it was for her garden. It's all tied up neat as a bow." Poirot's moustache twitched, and he turned to Japp, his expression sombre. "Neat, mon ami, but not without sorrow. Mademoiselle Henshaw's envy led her to a desperate act, one she claims was meant only to sabotage, not to kill. Yet the result is the same. A life lost, a talent extinguished. The Ebony Rose, it was both weapon and witness." Japp nodded, glancing at the roses. "Aye, it's a grim business. Those flowers, beautiful as they are, will always have a shadow over them now. The village won't forget this in a hurry." Poirot's fingers brushed the edge of the workbench, where the faint smear of aconite residue had first caught his eye. "The village, Inspector. It thrives on memory, on gossip. Madame Fournier was more than a florist. She was a keeper of secrets, a woman who saw the weaknesses of others. Her death, it was not only about envy, but about fear of what she knew." Japp raised an eyebrow. "You think there's more to it?" Clara's confession seemed straightforward. She was jealous, wanted to ruin Fournier's roses, and it went too far. Poirot's smile was faint, almost wistful. "Straightforward, yes, but the human heart, it is never simple. Mademoiselle Henshaw acted alone, I am convinced, but her act was born of a village where secrets fester. Monsieur Baxter's dubious deal, young Wells's troubled past, these were threads she might have pulled had she lived. Her death, it protects those secrets now." Japp scratched his head, his practical mind grappling with Poirot's musings. "So, you're saying she might have been a target for more than just Clara's jealousy? That's a stretch, Poirot. with what we've got." "Perhaps," Poirot conceded, his eyes returning to the roses. "But the little grey cells, they ponder all possibilities. We have our killer, and justice will be served. Yet I wonder what else Madame Fournier knew, what other shadows she cast." He moved to the row of ebony roses, their petals seeming to absorb the moonlight. "These roses, they are her legacy. Beautiful, yet deadly in the wrong hands. Like the truth, they require care to handle." Japp chuckled, though his tone was respectful. "You and your metaphors, Poirot. What now? Back to London, or are you staying to sniff out more village scandals?" Poirot adjusted his hat, his movements precise. "For now, I return to the peace of my apartment, where the only mysteries are those of a good book or a fine tisane. But St. Mary's Mead, it has taught me much. The heart of a village, it beats with the same passions as a city. Love, envy, fear. I shall not forget it." As they stepped out into the cool night, the greenhouse loomed behind them, a silent monument to a life cut short. The village lay quiet, its cottages dark, but Poirot knew its tranquility was a veneer. The truth had been uncovered, the poison rooted out, but the echoes of Madame Fournier's death would linger in the whispers of St. Mary's Mead. He paused at the gate, glancing back at the greenhouse. "Adieu, madame," he murmured. "Your roses, they will bloom again, but without your touch. Rest in peace." With a final nod to Japp, Poirot walked into the night, his cane tapping a steady rhythm, his mind already turning to the next puzzle that fate might bring. The Ebony Rose had told its story, and Hercule Poirot, with his little grey cells, had listened.